In the latter half of the 1800s, as we have seen, we start to get the emergence of mass compulsory primary schooling. This in part was a response to a perceived need to discipline the children of the poor. In part, it was a reaction to changing ideas of childhood. But it was also directed, as Emile Durkheim had recommended, towards consolidating the idea of the nation. Now, many of you might have this idea that nations have been around forever, that they have existed for a very long time. In part, this is very much an effect of the idea of the nation itself. If we go back 400 or 500 years ago, the main political unit was the town or the principality. They were very, very small. And people culturally identified with the town itself. Often they would take the name of the town as their own name. So it was not only a political unit, but it was also a focus for cultural identification. If we go back to the 1600s, we start to see the formation of the large political unit that we know as the state. This was basically achieved under the auspices of the absolute monarch, one who had absolute power of life and death over the population who dwelt within a given territory. The idea of the state and of the state having absolute authority over its resident population was ratified in the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. It's only really in the 1800s that you start to get the idea of the nation, of a form of cultural identification, of a shared language, a shared history, starting to be attached to this political unit that had previously been referred to as the state. According to Benedict Anderson, the nation is an imagined community. Now, by this, he didn't mean that the nation is imaginary or fantastic or anything like that. Rather, what he was referring to was the way that nations are comprised of large numbers of people, most of whom will never get to meet one another. They're dispersed over a wide territorial range. And accordingly, the nation itself, the idea of the nation as a common collective with a shared culture and a shared language, has to be made to live in the imaginations of its members. Schooling was seen as vital to this process of imagining the nation. So we get the emergence of the standardised national curriculum. This standardisation was important. It meant that every member of society, whether you were rich or poor, was getting the same thing, so that regardless of any differences in your life situations, you still felt yourself as belonging to the same collective. The curriculum reinforced this. So history would locate the nation in time. It may interest you that the big mythical figures in many of the European nations really only became culturally significant during the 1800s. Until this time, Arthur and the Knights of Camelot were not widely known by many people. Neither was the story of Joan of Arc in France. These mythical characters were brought back and given a larger-than-life presence in order to consolidate the idea that the nation had been around for a very long time. Similarly, geography located the nation in space, gave a clear understanding of the territorial borders, of the nature of the land, and of the people who lived there. Beyond those borders were other nations. Reading and writing were especially important, not just in instilling a sense of common language, but they were important because they enabled people to read newspapers. And in doing so, they felt that they were sharing in events in common with others. Reading also was a necessary skill for teaching the nation's literature, through which students understood that they were the inheritors of a grand cultural tradition. And science and maths were considered important because, in particular, it was scientific accomplishments that stood as symbols for the nation as being advanced, progressive, at the forefront of history.